Hello and welcome back, everyone. It's another episode of the RomaPress podcast. We hope you are all doing well. Very quickly, of course, to all of our wonderful patrons, we appreciate your support. Patreon.com/RomaPress. And again, thank you to all of you who have been watching on our YouTube. If you could subscribe, like all of that fun stuff you hear in every single video, youtube.com/@IS Roma Press, and oof to anybody who paid. And when there's a match, or more specifically, when there is a big match like tonight's, the derby, where you have Roma Lazio, I think of all the people that spent thousands and thousands and thousands of euro for this. They view this as, the apex, the pinnacle of their year, saving obscene amounts of money to fly to Fiumicino. You find a hotel, you make the 95-kilometer trek to the Olimpico. Your legs are dying. You're probably either breaking an ankle or tearing one of the ligaments in your knee whilst walking to the stadium, because anybody who has been to Roma for more than 2 seconds, the potholes in the road, you're going to get injured at some point. So between all of that, all of the walking, and you finally make it, you go into your seat, and then you are treated to that a match between Roma and Lazio that ends 0-0, and I won't say unentertaining, because I think Roma had opportunities in the first half that they really failed to take advantage of. I think particularly the first half of an hour, they had Lazio on the ropes. Now, again, this is going to be one of those matches where if you look at the stats, and we're going to show those right now, if you look at the final stats from tonight, it's going to look as if it was uneventful. The XG, very low for both sides, under 1 for both teams. So obviously, in terms of tanking actions, episodes, in terms of being able to realistically get the goal to your name, very few far and between tonight. However, I know opinion may vary on this. In one of the extra Patreon episodes I did before kickoff, I said even with the draw, I would be disappointed, because what did we see coming into this? We had one of those instances where you are watching the film and you are entering the part right before Act 3 where you reach the pinnacle of the action, the drama. And what do we see? 4 of the 7 teams ahead of Roma in the Serie A table drop points. Milan dropped points. Napoli somehow, good friend Rudy, everything is on schedule. I thought they would give the guy until February or March.
3 months. That 3 months. That's how long it took him to destroy a perfect team. A team that was breaking all kinds of records. Rui de Garcia, it took him 3 months. But anyway, let's continue because
Scoring goals for fun, and they cannot get the goal at home to Empoli, a team that Roma scored a touchdown against and won 7-0. They dropped points. Atalanta, because of course, as I was recording this pre-match episode, I said Atalanta lost, and as I finished the finished pressing edit, naturally they score the equalizer against Udinese, but nonetheless they dropped points too. And this was coming into tonight. Before you even kick the ball, against Lazio, you are on 17 points. You have an opportunity, should you win, to go to 20 and put you 1 point behind Napoli in the race for top 4. And by the way, that would also give to you, you would be 1 point behind Napoli before you would even face them. A Napoli that the complexion of this team and the view of this Napoli is going to be way different this time than it was 1 year ago. So who's to say that they realistically and automatically defeated Roma? So for me, coming into this, I am adamant that because you had all of those things happen before your team even kicked off the ball, you had to win. You had to win because these opportunities do not come around often where you screwed up so badly in the early weeks. You lost. If you look at the table now, the kick to the groin of those first matches, it hurts even more. The lingering effects from dropping points to Salernitana, Hellas Verona looks even worse now. But you could have at least in part made up for that tonight had you gotten a victory over Lazio, and Roma didn't. And again, I know opinion will be varied on this. I know some will not be as negative as I am right now, and maybe even you consider or view this differently than myself. To me, a big, big, big opportunity lost. Very rarely will I say if you get something, a result against the big teams, and I don't even know if we consider Lazio into the likes of Napoli, Atalanta, Milan, Inter. I think we should. That's a debate for another day. To me, an opportunity fumbled tonight. What do you think? Are you more positive than me? Because had those things not happened prior to kickoff, I have a completely different view of tonight. But the fact that you had nearly half of the teams ahead of you in the table drop points, to me, it made the opportunity can't miss, and unfortunately, they missed it. I think they needed to win.
Well, I mean, obviously after what we saw on Thursday against Slavia Praga, the only outcome that we would have envisioned as a morale booster would have been a win tonight. I think this point tonight does not do much for either side. I think both teams were terrified of losing this derby. I think that Roma, all in all, um, had the better chances than Lazio and looked better than when Lazio even dropped off in the second half. But exactly, they
Mm,
didn't take advantage. Lazio in the second half, and Romagnoli, so the Lazio defender, just admitted to it. They in the second half they just dropped physically,
yes.
and couldn't keep up. And I think Roma didn't do enough in that instance. And especially when you have once again an attack that is composed of Romelu Lukaku and Paulo Dybala, you cannot end up with zero goals scored, and most
Yes.
importantly, Lukaku had not a single goal, a shot on goal. Lukaku had two shots tonight.
Mm.
Both of them were off target. Very few touches. Dybala, once again, very
Oh.
underwhelming in a big match. You really felt like he was out of gas and also out of his element tonight.
Mm.
Um, I think
I
when
couldn't
your
agree
best
more. Yeah.
player is arguably Spinazzola, and at this point of the season, this very Spinazzola who's missed the past few games, who hasn't played in like 5 games because of a muscular injury. If he is your best player, then I think that tells you all you need to know about tonight's game. Tonight's game was very disappointing, I think, for both teams. Every side, Lazio and Roma, will try to make it seem like tonight was still a good outcome, not losing. But I think it is that's the problem, that concern, that fear of losing, that was very visible throughout the entire game on both ends of the floor, on both ends of the pitch, with both teams practically having the same number of shots on goal,
Yes.
same, more or less the same xG. But even beyond that, just they didn't look convincing. They didn't look like they were
Mm.
in it. I would argue that this is probably the ugliest derby that we've seen in, I would say, 3 years, definitely, just because of how uneventful it was, how dialed in it was, and it was all because of that fear to commit, to have some, a spark, because I think both teams thought that if you show glimpses of something, you may end up regretting it. You may end up losing. You may end up giving the opponent a precious counterattack, and God knows what happens, right? But in the end, it's a safe result. It's a result that really doesn't do much for you. It doesn't move the needle. It doesn't do much for you going into the international break. It sort of leaves you, unsatisfied. Really, I feel like I just witnessed, one of those. I would say a really dialed in, uh, a really dialed in credits sequence in a movie, where it's just, okay, the credits are rolling, let's get it over with, this is it, this is the end of the show. It
Mm.
almost felt like both teams just wanted to get to this international break and have some time to recover, but in doing so, none of them took risks, and the payoff, I think, is equally bad for Roma and Lazio. So tonight's point, Mourinho will now say that it's still a good point, and Maurizio Sarri, I'm sure, will say the same thing. But in my eyes, it is a disappointment because more can be done. More can be done. You cannot to have again a team that has Paulo Dybala and Lukaku leading the attack in such an important match, and you have I think one shot on target all game
Yes,
long.
between the two. Yeah.
Um, that is that taps into a larger issue that I don't think arises only tonight. I think it goes
Mm.
back a while, and it is a problem that will not be cannot be swept under the rug just because it's the international break.
That is a great point. I think what I take away from this one is exactly as you said. It really, really felt as if neither side. It was as if they were playing it so safe and almost as if there was like an agreement prior to the match where they shake hands and they say, "Well, given it's Italian football, I don't want to go down this road." So I won't say there was an agreement prior to the match, but it was also almost as if there was this unspoken head nod, so to speak, where it was just like, okay, we're going to take it easy. Let's just see this out. I mean, that was so you what you just said about the not taking risks. I couldn't agree more. I mean, can you remember? Because it seems like in every single derby, there is at least one sending off or at least one hot moment. The only hot moment that comes to my mind is Pedro getting into the face of Paredes. Beyond that, I can't really think of many fireworks from this one that sort of uh, upped the tension within the stadium. I mean, this was one of the most just bland. Boring to me. It almost gives it too much credit. I mean, this was bland. And the thing I found most surprising was you touched upon it just briefly. I was shocked because Lazio, they came into this with 2 more days of rest. Roma, horrible in Europa League on Thursday evening. I was expecting to see a team very fatigued. I was expecting to see a team that would struggle with the physicality portion of it, and that's not even mentioning too Spinazzola. He just thrown back into the starting 11 after an injury. Paulo Dybala still kind of getting his feet wet. He recently returned from injury as well. So I didn't know really what to expect in terms of okay, uh, these are the guys that are fresh and we would be able to count on tonight. Um, Physically, I thought Roma were good tonight. I was surprised at how just non-existent Lazio were physically. I thought that second half was abysmal. I don't even know what to say about it. There was nothing. That first half, though, and especially in the first half an hour, I thought there was a chance to really make your mark early, and it was just an opportunity gone astray. It's hard for me to even like get into specifics about the technical or the tactical stuff if we want to talk about more of the statistical analysis tonight. I mean, I am looking at the XG from tonight, and this really, again, one of those times where you look at the final score, you scroll down to the data, and that really tells the entire story. Expected goals tonight of Lazio
But
0.57.
I think you just go and look at the numbers that Romelu Lukaku and Paulo Dybala have. Like really, I think that is far more telling because XG, okay, it tells the story about situations that circumstances that took place within the match. But I think the statistics of Dybala and Lukaku, your two main players, your two star players, who should be producing in the attack, once again tonight they are left with nothing, and it addresses an issue with Dybala in the big games, okay, with Lukaku with practically no service, but again that issue of you're playing in a 3-5-2 and you're giving zero looks to two players that could make the difference in a match of this level, or should be making the difference in a match of this level, because
Mm.
once again Dybala goes missing in a big match. Lukaku, for all the good intentions that he has, he needs a clean look, and the guy has two shots and both of them are off target. So um, I think that is far more telling, and I think that is far more telling about the issues that plague this team, not the two teams tonight. This is not an individual episodic occurrence. This is a repetitive pattern. This is something that we've seen before. This is something that we've identified before as a problem.
What should we take from it tonight then? I mean, I said simply because if we are just taking this without any context, this specific match, you're removing all of the other context from the situation. You are not considering the fact that Milan, Napoli, Atalanta, Bologna all dropped points coming into this. Remove that from the equation. I would think more often than not, we would be not positive, but at least content with a draw against Lazio. This is a very particular match where a lot of unknown things can happen. There's a lot of or many singular episodes that define this match and have defined this game over decades. So one way or the other, anything can happen, particularly in a match like this. For me, though, I can't think that way. I have to bring the context into it and think to myself, wow, you know, what in my mind, that would be an extra motivation to go out there and maybe risk some things tonight. Keep your foot down on the gas a little more. Um, um, find that extra level that perhaps you can get to when the times are becoming difficult. All of these things before kickoff. That is such a huge advantage to know you have an opportunity to jump up to the table and be 1 point outside of top four. Consider all of the things that you screwed up through the first month and a half of this season. After all of that crap, you had an opportunity tonight. Should you won 1 point outside of top four, giving yourself a big boost going into an international break. You have a very, very, very difficult December where you're going to face some of the teams that are ahead of you in top four. Um, it would have made those ties more intriguing in my opinion. But instead, you have this very bland performance with just guys. I won't say they looked unbothered because I think that's a very harsh attack or a very level against a professional footballer. I think, in my opinion, that's a very harsh accusation. I won't say that they didn't look unbothered, but they looked very content. Content is really the only thing that comes to my mind today. They looked as if, okay, you know what, let's get to that international break. Let's regroup and refocus. And to me, that is disappointing because again, all 3 points tonight. Man, does that really change my view of the season? If you take the first 5 to 7 games versus the latest 5 to 7, it's very bad, and I won't say very good, but good. It would at least give you some a way, not completely allow you to evade responsibility for those major missteps in those early weeks, but it gives you an extra boost and some breathing room in terms of, okay, well, we screwed up here, but we made up for it in this place. And I just don't like what I saw tonight. It would be one thing if they had 10 shots on target. You hit the post a couple of times. Fine. You were willing to take risks. I can live with that. But what we saw tonight, man, it was as if it was that final friendly match before the season begins, where you have two teams that are just going about the pitch, barely, barely giving the mo or barely giving even the slightest amount of care or attention to detail on this match. I just the fact that there were no major episodes besides again Pedro and Paredes getting into it, that just goes, and of course the light goes out as I'm saying this stuff. That is the perfect metaphor for this match. That is really all that needs to be said about this one. I mean, there was no fireworks, nothing memorable. I mean, in terms of derbies where this one will rank in the history books, I mean, this has to be among at least recent ones. This is going to be one of the most forgotten. This will be at the back of the filing cabinets. It's so boring, unbothered from everything. This was a bland yuck. Just nothing about it felt
It's
good. And
almost on the level of that derby that I mentioned last time out, the 0-0 derby that we played in 2018, right after the Champions League qualification to the semifinal with Barcelona.
yes,
Right, we have that memorable match with Barcelona. We qualified to the semifinal. It's so historic. It's so wonderful. And I think at that same time, Lazio were I think they were playing perhaps the semifinal in the Coppa Italia. They also had
yes,
something to look forward to, and I remember just those two teams playing very similarly, a very unbothered, uneventful match where both teams were trying just not to lose, to keep the risk to a minimum. Tonight, it really felt like instead of going for the opponent in the second half, and recognizing that the opponent is struggling, for example, perhaps bringing on El Sharawi or Azmoun
mm,
earlier on, trying to breathe some life into this team. um we just sat back and seemed satisfied to go out with a point. I don't think that entirely resolves the issues that we've seen this team have over the last few weeks, and I think these are issues that will stay with us um, for quite some time, because the international break is never a time when you actually address the things that you want to address. There's going to be a lot of players missing, and then you're going to be caught up in a whirlwind of very difficult games that await you, and that you're where you are facing a series of opponents where, I mean, you don't have a really impressive record against them. So you'll face the likes of Napoli, Atalanta, Juventus, and that is just the beginning of it. This should have been like, so I think this is like the end of the easy part of the schedule. Now,
yes.
really, the terrifying half of it begins, and Roma didn't close it out properly. They leave you hanging. They leave you hanging because they show you that. In the moment where you need to put the foot on the gas, you don't. You hesitate. You think about not losing. You think about not dropping points. You think about not getting injured. Everything but actually winning, and winning convincingly against a direct opponent. So in my eyes, a point, okay, doesn't, it rules out it rules out a loss. It rules out 0 points.
Right.
It rules out the humiliation of yet another loss in the derby, which would have been your third consecutive one. Instead, we're left with a quite a meaningless result. It doesn't change much in the league table. It doesn't change much for the fate of both teams. Both teams are still far from consistent. Both teams are far from good. Both teams are still far from their objectives. So there is not much we can add to how the performance went, because I think the team and Mourinho are the first ones to recognize that the performance was there, but in very limited capacity. It was there to sort of plug the holes get a band-aid here, avoid any damage, avoid injuries, avoid humiliation, and you get to go home, and you get to go on international duty starting tomorrow morning, and you can think about something else. So it almost feels like the team was just aiming to get by through the finish line, and either go on a 2 weeks holiday, or go on a 2 weeks international duty with your respective national team. And so I don't know, man. I mean, it's just you always want these games, these the derby in particular, to be really memorable events, and the ones obviously that we remember fondly are the ones where we impressed, where we dominated, where we came across as the stronger team. And this one tonight just goes into the catalog of the ones that you can just quickly dismiss, because it doesn't provide any insight. It doesn't really offer a new outlook on either team. I mean, it reaffirms your conviction about the two teams. It's just that Maurizio Sarri is still struggling with Lazio, and Jose Mourinho is still struggling with Roma. Not much to set them apart. There is not much difference between the two sides, and and the two sides did not get closer to their respective objectives. So, as fans, we I guess there is, a part of us that is glad that after Thursday's shit show, we were not subjected to another, disheartening display. But this was still far from anything that you want to engage with as a fan. It's almost like, it's like one of those sad TV dinners, okay, like you're so
Right.
depressed, you go to the store, you get, the stuff that you can make in 3 minutes in the microwave, and who
Oh,
cares, just enough to feed yourself with, just like, when you're depressed and you can't even think about food, but you know that as a normal human being, you need food to function, and so you just, whatever it is, you eat it, but exactly, you don't enjoy the meal. It does the bare minimum to keep you going, and this is exactly what happens for Lazio and Roma. It just gives them the bare minimum, not to hang their heads and think to themselves, "Well, we suck." No, it's enough to you know to keep them up there in the table, near the top echelon of the teams, and still, giving them enough hope of attaining their predefined objectives. So
I
that's
couldn't
about
agree
it.
more. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. The thing for me is among the lines or along the lines, kind of like you said. I mean, tonight gives you close to nothing. For me, I like having concreteness. I like knowing things, seeing a seeing a concrete answer, having some sort of finality. I mean, this was, in my opinion, again, an opportunity for Roma to show something, to show that, yeah, we know we screwed up earlier in the season, but we are here. The group is here. The team is here. The performance is here. Tonight, there was just nothing. This, though, it does put a bow on at least about, well, not technically, but about a third of the season in Serie A, about a third of the calendar having been completed. Just to wrap this up, I mean, it's so hard to judge this Roma because I was thinking about that during the match. Because at least in my mind, it still seems like Romelu Lukaku still arrived only some weeks ago. I can still remember just so vividly, just finding out, receiving that text from the media team of Roma that it was complete. It still feels like a bit of a whirlwind, and we have to remember. I mean, Lukaku, his first match was Milan, if I'm not mistaken, and he only came on for like 15 to 20 minutes for that one. What, right? Yeah, it was Milan. Um, so really, you did not have your complete team in place for the first month, and then after that, obviously, it is going to take some time to acclimate to one another. How are you judging, or where do you view, or how do you even judge this Roma with one third of at least the league calendar in the books? Because I have to tell you, I almost feel as if I know less now than I did in early September. I feel like I know less now because we see them pull out one against Lecce where they show a lot of character, and then a few days later, you see the absolute shit show as we did against Slavia Praha. I think that in inside this past week, in my opinion, where you have a thrilling last minute victory, a shit show in Europa League, and then a non-existent fixture, two teams who are non-existent in a 0-0 draw. That encapsulates, in my opinion, this week. That encapsulates Roma of this season. You have no idea what you are going to get from one match to the next, and that by itself is a problem. Really, that in and of itself, the consistently inconsistent, as they say, that is a problem because I feel as if I still don't have any answers or concrete evidence on this Roma. I don't know what to expect, and for me, that's still an issue.
I think that's an issue for first and foremost Mourinho, who just gave us his his view on the season so far, and he's still talking about on untapped potential, and he's still saying we're 3 points away from fourth place, and so we're
Oh.
relatively in a good position given what we have had to deal with in terms of injuries to Smalling, Pellegrini, Sanchez, and so on and so on. The list goes on, but. When he talks about this team, he continues to talk about a team that we still haven't seen, a team that has Renato Sanchez play meaningful minutes, whereas the team that we saw tonight has Renato Sanchez barely played 10 minutes. It's messy. It's a messy situation, not only for the fans but for the team as well. You have you have a Roma that is desperately aiming for Champions League football, but is doing anything but stay consistent, relatively consistent, that just enough to allow them to to be among the top four. I mean, we haven't been
Mm.
there since what was in March when we were third for like
Oh
a
my
week or so.
gosh. Yes.
That was the last time, and then from third we dropped to six, and goodbye, goodbye and good luck. And so it's it's messy. It's a messy situation. It doesn't rule out anything just yet, but you are going into a really tough stretch. You are heading into the really, really difficult, meaty portion of the season where you are going to face a lot of teams that you have struggled against in the past. And and so far you have shown too few signs that would lead us to believe that this team can really turn it around and become the team that we want them to become. And again, I think the first one to conclude this behind the scenes, obviously not in front of the media, would be Mourinho. He's looking at a group of players that have not given him the reassurances he was seeking, and I think it works the other way around too. He hasn't given them the reassurances that they are seeking. I think despite his brilliant start, Romelu Lukaku could be much higher in terms of statistics, and Paulo
Mm.
Dybala more so. But again, just like tonight, these things cannot be labeled as episodic individual occurrences that take place in one game. No, the fact that you scored 0 goals against Lazio today with this kind of attack occurred in previous games and is a problem that you will have to address. Why are you're producing more than you did last season? Sure, but you're still not producing enough. And last season you may have produced more opportunities, so less output but more opportunities. This season you're very, very, very stagnant, despite having arguably made some improvements, and also had the Lukaku's arrival is a big boost that cannot
Yes.
be ignored. And I think so it works both ways. They're just so far the storyline of these first 3 months is there are no reassurances for us fans, for the team, for the managers. It's one big question mark that Roma will have to address at some point, and the sooner the better.
All right. Well, then the final word. So we both said the goal this season. It's top four. Basta. Nothing else. We're not going to settle for anything. Obviously, you look at the table right now, not on schedule, behind schedule, and that is before as before, as you just said, this December coming up is I don't want to say that, with it will be at that point still less than half of the season having been played. It's difficult to say that that is the, do or die part of the season because you still have the new year, but you get that wrong, it could be season over before the new year, and that is what I dread. I mean, even January, I think they have Atalanta just after. I think that is their first game of the new year. So December and into the new year. I mean, just think to yourself if all of those go wrong, it's season done just after the new year, and that is where I have just an overwhelming sense of fear because they have given you no reason to give you to believe that they can do this and get good important results consistently from one match to the next. And you have guys, for me, as you just said, Paulo Dybala at the front of the line, who just seem, again, I'm not going to say unbothered, but almost like they haven't arrived yet for the season, as if you are waiting on them to still get here. That is the part I find most worrying because let's be very clear, and there's no reason for us to play coy with this. On paper, okay, Romelu Lukaku, Paulo Dybala. If we are talking on paper, that's it. One of the top two or three attacking duos in Serie A. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. I don't think that's breaking news. So why do we have problems scoring in a match like tonight? Why does Paulo Dybala seemingly with a paper cut miss important stretches? You know, there are things that still need to be answered, still need to be resolved, and a match like tonight doesn't give you any reassurance. Perhaps it doesn't make you feel any worse, but I just having still so many unanswered questions one third of the way through your league campaign, I think is a problem. And to still have this problem lingering before you go into the most difficult stretch of your season to date, I do not feel great going into it. So I don't know what to say beyond that other than hope that something just clicks at some point because it's not as if the window is not open. You cannot a lot of these problems that we are seeing with them. You cannot just buy a player to fix it. You can't. So something has to click at some point, and frankly, beyond that, I don't know what hope we have. They just have to. You just have to hope something changes. I guess within their mindset because I don't see
I
what.
still think there have to be answers found in inside the dressing room, found in the
Yes.
tactical room. Like the team lacks ideas, team lacks alternatives. So you have the players to execute a plan A and a plan B. I'm not gonna say you have the players to compete on all fronts at once and give us quality performances week in week out, but you have the players to dominate the games that you should be dominating, and you have the players to make a difference, at least to the extent that it is expected of you. And tonight, I think it was expected of Roma to at least try and score. Same thing with Slavia. Same thing with a lot of other games this season. Doing the bare minimum will not save you in the coming stretch of games. It will not. The next month and a half or so will really force you to confront your own demons, to confront who you are as a team, and will force you to come up with solutions. Because otherwise, season over. Season over. Because if you lack ideas in a league that is this competitive and yet at the same time that is clearly, giving you the enough room to make mistakes, because again, you find yourself, yes, 3 points away from fourth place after a really mediocre start. You got that. You have to take the chance. You just have to make the best
Yes.
of it. And Roma right now haven't done so. They need to do it. They need to get it right.
Completely agree. Okay, we will leave it there. We will return later in the week. Until then, ciao.